Get me? I'm Tom Tobin, Sergeant Barnes. Today is November 13th, 2024. Welcome to our regularly scheduled Wednesday morning Rotary Club of Hudson meeting. Great to see all your shiny faces. Beautiful all day shaping up. Let's see. Could I ask Rich Warfield to step forward and lead us in some inspirational thoughts and comments? In the immortal words of Charlie Brown, good grief.
Good morning, Rotarians, and Phil, as Joe would say, let us not judge on how religious we are or we are not. It's God's decision to judge. All right, let's liven up the crowd here. Let us bow our heads, please. Father, thank you for this time with all Rotarians this morning. And thank you for this environment, especially Rotary International allows us to pray to you, Lord, in the open public. Very hard to do that, as you know, Lord. And thank you for the food that is out there, those people that enjoy it. And thank you, Lord God, for our speaker and the words that come from our mouth, ones that we can learn from. And we appreciate their presence. In your great powerful name we pray. Amen. Good job. And Tricia Getz, would you come and lead us in the pledge and the four-way test? Oh my gosh, she's bringing her phone up. Good for you. Here we go.
And pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. And the four-way test. Number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And four, will it beneficial to all concerned?
Love it. She's real Girl Scout. I mean, you're very prepared. I don't know if that's part of the motto or not, but. And our President Kelly, let's give him a warm welcome this morning. Yeah. Morning, everybody. Morning. Stop up here.
I wanted to thank Pat and Andy and Jay for volunteering for yesterday was I think the first, at least at that location, Veterans Day. So, it was the second? But at that location it was the first, right? So I think going forward, the scout cabin, that little square where the flag pole's at, will be the area where the city will celebrate Veterans Day going forward. It was a good event. The sun came out, got a little warm. Salvation Army, I think everything is squared away. It's all on e-bite. If you don't know, go to e-bite and you'll figure out where you're supposed to be. So everyone knows there's no meeting the 27th, which is the day before Thanksgiving. There's no meeting the 25th of December. If you guys want to come, you may be the only ones here. And there's then no meeting the 1st of January either. All of those two are Wednesdays. You would, yes. If everyone saw, I don't know if everybody did, but when you came in this morning, there was a sign-up sheet for, really this is for if you're going to have breakfast, the 4th of December, which would be the holiday program. So on that day, we'll come directly in here at 7:30, listen to the high school choir, and then when that's over, a few announcements, and then into the dining area for breakfast. There isn't going to be any formal reading on that particular day, which is the 4th, which is three Wednesdays away. Yeah, you hear Corey though. And that's all I have. Jim, you're going to introduce our guest.
not one list, so I'm gonna. What's the?
Yeah, good point. That is coming up the 7th. Do you have the sign up? Oh, is it? Um,
Thank you. Well, continuing our, Rachel. I just want to mention that I threw an order sheet in by the 17th for Pat for the popcorn. By the way, this is for the fall fundraiser. I know it's not right over there. But I have to turn in the order sheet for Pat popcorn by this Friday, and I'm going to call Costco by this Friday for the flower order. So Marilyn and I decided to post 30 on the flowers. So we're going to order an extra 10. So when people see them and they change their mind about how beautiful they look, they're going to open up their wallets. So I will report to the board after this process, all the money is blah, blah, blah. Today's the last Wednesday, sign up. Thank you, Rich. Anyways, continuing our November theme of volunteering, and today we have a wonderful speaker from actually from the Akron Camp. Her name is Pauline Benson. She is, believes in the power of community. She first got involved with the food bank through the largest campaign under Harvest Wonder. Guy participated in that, picked up a barrel and got them out and all the businesses that participated. And she actually joined the team in 2010 as a grant writer, led a variety of fundraising advocacy initiatives. She led the food bank's Growing for Good campaign, facilitating an investment of $17.5 million regional capacity of the food bank, and was instrumental in the organization's strategic planning efforts. She's responsible for the oversight of corporate and volunteer engagement, direct mail, and individual and institutional giving. Prior to her work at the bank, she managed the newspaper and education program of the Akron Beacon Journal and led community engagement of young citizens in community affairs. Served as chair of Summit County Food and Shelter Program, the class 21 of economy, talent, and leadership training. Welcome. Let her just. Might be able to use this.
Good morning. Good morning, Rotarians. So glad to be with you this morning. So grateful for the invitation. It was a beautiful drive, beautiful morning. And it's so great to see you all gather around having breakfast together, talking about meals. And it just reminded me that 2 weeks from now, we're going to be planning our Thanksgiving meals. And that's really what I'm here to talk to you about food security, what it looks like in our country, in our region, and what our food bank is doing about it. The Akron Canton Regional Food Bank has been an institution in our community for 42 years. And so, we have been serving the community by rescuing food and pairing it with individuals who are in need of that food. And that's really how food banking came to be. Oh, there's slides. There we go. Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So as I mentioned, food banking in America really started back in the 60s and 70s because there was additional surplus food. And as you can see, 80 million tons of food is wasted in the US every year. And so early on, community organizers came together and really the history I'll share with you in just a moment, but it was about how can we take this food and make it useful. You know, we don't want to see food going into the landfills when there's so many people who are dealing with poverty and, you know, who don't have enough to eat, who, you know, may not have a Thanksgiving meal that's full. And so that's when food banks across the US really started to come into fruition. So just a little bit about hunger in our own community. About 1 in 9 individuals are food insecure. And people come in and out of food insecurity all the time. It's not a constant. So between the surplus food that's available and the people who need it, these are things that change. I've been with the food bank for 14 years. So we've seen economic shifts. We've seen a pandemic. We've seen issues in the food supply chain that have impacted the amount of available food. And then we've seen people, especially over the past few years of the pandemic, who've never had to go to a food bank or a food pantry before. And at least 1/3 of those that we've served in the past 3 years are new to food banking. And so it's not, you know, what you might think or what you might hear that it's, you know, the same people over and over coming for support. But people come in and out of food insecurity, you know, when they're dealing with medical issues, when they're dealing with just struggling with utilities, and especially inflation lately has been really something that so many people have cited as a reason why they have needed to come to the food pantry. And so many of them, like I said, often for the first time. And that's not an easy thing for people to do, to step up and say, I need help. And so that's why the food bank and our network is here to help those individuals. In Summit County, just because we're in Hudson, wanted to share a little bit about the local region. The food insecurity is about 60,000 individuals, and about 17,000 of those are children. And so often, you know, the people who suffer, you know, the most from food insecurity can often be children, seniors, you know, those who may be more vulnerable, who really need those nutrients. And a lot of times families and households, they'll make sacrifices. And, you know, sometimes the parents won't eat so that they can put food on the table for their children. And our state association, which is located in Columbus, Ohio, they kind of organize for all food banks in Ohio. They do a hunger study each year. And what we know is that more than half of the people that we're serving in our state through the food bank and its network are having to choose between whether to buy groceries or pay for medical bills. So that's a huge issue, is that food is what you need to be healthy. And so many people struggle with insurance issues, with chronic disease, with things like diabetes. And so having healthy food is something that is just so important. So just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of who it is that is coming to the food bank and asking for our assistance. A little bit about the history. The man here on the phone, his name is John Van Hengel, and he's really the reason food banks exist today. So this is St. Mary's Food Bank in Phoenix, Arizona, was the very first food bank in the US. And really what happened is that Mr. Van Hengel noticed a family digging through a garbage container and looking for food that a restaurant had thrown away. And to him, it was just unacceptable. No family should have to be digging through garbage to find some food. And so he established what he said, you know, let's make it work like a bank works, where anyone who may have surplus food items, make a deposit, and, you know, we can hold this food somewhere, And when we find people who may need food assistance, they can come and make a withdrawal. So that's really kind of the history behind why we're part of this thing. So our mission is to lead a collaborative network that empowers people to experience healthy and hunger-free lives. We distribute food to feed people, and we advocate, engage, and convene our community in the fight to end hunger. And so, of course, what we do, we provide, we make the connection, you know, for people who need food to the surplus food that exists in our community and in our society. But more importantly, advocating, engaging, you know, talking to people about why the problem exists and what we do about it. Because, you know, food banks are not the solution to ending hunger in America. I'll say it. The biggest safety net is our government programs like SNAP. So for every dollar that is donated to the food bank, we can provide about 3 meals. For every dollar of support in SNAP, that's about 9 meals. And that's also, that's a family who could go to the grocery store and, you know, make those food selections. So without the two, without the private support that we get in our communities and the public support, the government benefits that people are entitled to in our society, that's what makes it work. And so it's a partnership, it's public, private, but we do everything we can to capture as much of that surplus food and distribute it in our local community. And so our vision, of course, is a thriving community free of hunger, a community where nobody has to struggle to make those impossible decisions between, should I pay the heating bill this month or, you know, get the groceries I know that I need for my household. There's so many just impossible decisions that are often made when families are struggling with food insecurity, or even just temporarily, you know, somebody has a hospital stay, the medical bills are high, and all of a sudden they find themselves not able to get the food that they need. And we've all seen what inflation has done as well. In the past couple of years, we've really seen demand spike. And of course, you all go to the grocery store. You know what it's like when, you know, you fill your cart and it's twice as much as it. So that's a challenge. It's a huge challenge, and it forces people to make really difficult decisions. So what we see in the future, someday, we hope that with our support, public benefits also, that we have a price for you. So a little bit about the programs that we have at the food bank. We have 2 pantries now that operate on site. So if you're not familiar, raise your hand if you've been to the Akron Canton campus at Opportunity Parkway. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I've talked to a lot of you who said you volunteered there, and we appreciate that. That's really the reason we can do what we do. So the pantry is something a little bit new. We had a capital campaign that kicked off a little bit after the pandemic. We actually built a secondary campus in 2020 and opened it in 2021. And that was the first time we were able to open a pantry that we could serve the community on site at the food bank. So what you see here is one of our volunteers helping in our pantry that is a choice pantry, set up much like a grocery store, so that families can walk through with the grocery cart, choose what they need from what's available. There's always fresh produce. There's always shelf-stable items, dairy, those important products that families are looking for. And so that's the food pantry and resource center in Stark County. That's on Cherry Avenue. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the community of Canton, but we built our building on the site that used to be a grocery store. And so it's a very walkable community. And so they were used to coming to this site to get food. And so now we have a food pantry there. It's open every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're serving at least 700 families per week, but that can fluctuate. Like I said, a lot of things that happen in the economy, and there are very direct correlations when, you know, for example, last spring, pandemic-related benefits were ended. They ended. And so a lot of people who had been receiving SNAP or child tax credit, all of a sudden, those things were gone. And so we did see that demand for our services spike up. So there's a direct correlation that we see from the things that are happening in the economy. And, you know, you can't always predict those either. But that's the food pantry and resource center. We call it a resource center because we also have community partners who come in, like job and services, different workforce development partners in the community who can help with things like other benefits or helping to find a job or helping to find some health care or doing health screenings. So while they can come and get the food that they need, we also make sure that there's other resources available because typically people who are struggling with food insecurity are struggling with poverty. And poverty, you know, has a multitude of issues and support systems needed. And so we want to make sure that we are collaborating with all of those community partners to bring all of the support in one place. So we also have a pop-up pantry, and this is something that we started really during the pandemic because we were struggling to find ways to bring food into communities. The food bank has 600 different programs throughout 8 counties. So these are all different hot meal sites and pantries, but there are certainly locations within the region that have, you know, less access, I would say. So this pop-up pantry, we're able to send it to different locations in the communities that we serve that maybe don't have as many food pantries in the area. You know, there's one that goes to college campuses, that goes to, you know, different areas of need. And we're able to fill this truck up with boxes of food and produce and things like that and serve at least 300 people in a community. So that pop-up pantry goes out about 8 to 10 times per month to the same places where people know they can go and get at least, you know, about 5 to 6 days worth of food. Our senior program is something also that that we don't put donuts in there. That's picture. But our commodity supplemental food program is a partnership that we have with the USDA. And so there are government commodities that are boxed up and we are serving seniors each month with those boxes. And so senior, you know, have to qualify. Of course, it's a governmental program. And so there's an application process and a check-in. But they're able to get that food every single month. Sometimes twice a month, and sometimes home delivered to them. We also have a feeding kids program. So we have backpack programs. You may have heard of different backpack programs that are able to give food to kids, typically on a Friday, so that over the weekend they have, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so we are serving currently about 14,000 children per month. And this is through our different programs throughout 8 counties. But again, just providing access to kids in their household that they're able to take that food home with them. Oh, our Jack video. Let me see if we'll play. Okay. No. Wonder. Oh. So this is a video that we made recently about child care. So we decided to do this video really because hunger affects children in, you know, such a way that, you know, can often impede their learning. It can cause health issues. It can cause behavior issues.
So you
I think
sharing to set up sharing the volume.
even if it's just temporary.
Let's see.
It's just.
Oh, that.
Right.
Let's see.
So we can see. We did a video about 10 years ago.
That's it. There was something for volume. So
I don't doubt it. So
how many participants we can share? Let's see. And then
Any questions while we're waiting?
going away,
Well, I
headphone.
just want to go back and say, did you say that SNAP is able to feed, do 9 meals for every dollar of what federal money that goes into it?
You're gonna turn this up?
How is that
That
even
works.
possible?
Well, I think just the power of having, the volume and having, that available to families.
There was something on sharing.
It's, yeah.
We may not be able to do this, but-
And so, that's often, it's based on, pricing of food and,
Meeting,
the food
I
bank.
think it might be on the setup of the meeting.
So that's, it's, for every dollar contributed to hunger. Free versus not.
Yeah, I tried turning that off.
No, it's gotta be on Booth Way. Oh, that's not.
And I think sometimes the power
Yeah.
of that can be undersold.
Really.
976. This holiday season.
See how it keeps switching?
Yeah.
Booth laptop. Okay, try it.
Let me just mention one other thing too, because I'm sure you'll all be happy to know that our Hudson High School has a backpack lunch program. And, it's not as developed. I think we heard from the golfer, Ben's birdie bags.
Birdie bag, yeah.
Birdie bags. Out of Kent. So ours is a bit smaller, but we do have an easy.
Yeah.
Play outside.
Okay, so now make sure this is on the iPod. Okay, that's on Booth. Okay.
Jack. He likes to read, play
Thank you.
outside, and hopes to be a firefighter one day. He also loves helping people. Like most parents, Jack's mom wants him to learn, grow, and thrive. But she's having a hard time learning, because everything is getting more expensive. Especially for kids. Sometimes people don't get it.
That's Kate. So that's our new video. We haven't really, quite rolled it out, but really the plan is, just like we did with the video before, of course, showing it to different groups, just to raise awareness around hunger, but also in schools and with children, because a lot of building community support, often starts with a household.
Yeah.
For some reason it keeps like. Kind of
Yeah.
unswitching.
Yeah.
So starting this conversation in our community and at tables, around food, I think it's really important for families who are able to support in some way. So that's Jack. So thank you for being patient, watching that. Just a little bit more about the food bank work, I I think I kind of explained, basically that food and funds was donated to the food bank. We've got an 85,000 square foot warehouse in Akron and 40,000 square feet in Canton. So we have a multitude of capacity and space. And thankfully, like I said, we had a capital campaign kind of in the midst of the pandemic, just in time, so that we did have capacity to respond to that crisis, which it certainly was. But we're able to hold at least 2 million pounds of inventory of those donations within our warehouse. And so those food and funds are donated and stored at the food bank, then distributed to those 600 partner programs that exist in 8 counties in Northeast Ohio. And then in each of those counties, you've got different food pantries, hot meal sites, shelters, and programs like backpacks and senior food box programs. And so all of those together are getting that food out. And so it's really an efficient network that is mostly grassroots and run by volunteers, which is pretty awesome. And a lot of Rotarians, a lot of Kiwanis Club and churches and nonprofit organizations that come together and say, hey, you know, we might need a food pantry in our community. And so the power of volunteerism, to me, is really what has made this food bank exist for all of these years. And so we're just so proud to have the support of the community in these efforts. So that's just kind of the scale of our warehouse in Akron. We did add on, we had a capital campaign and added more refrigeration space and more freezer space. We're both were, again, like I said, just in time and really critical to the best food that we get, I would say, is our fresh produce. And also with additional freezer space, we're able to store more frozen meat products. Meat is, of course, highly valuable item. But if you're curious about where our food comes from, you can see, we'll start over on your right, that 30% is picked up locally in our 8-county region. So we're sending trucks out to Walmart, Sam's Clubs, and Giant Eagles, and grocery stores, and we've got great food manufacturers in our region. We're very lucky to have such a surplus and wealth of support in our region. Those are donations. And then you can see next that 24% is the state of Ohio. We have, I'm pretty proud of this for Ohio. It's one of the greatest programs of public and private partnership. All 12 food banks in Ohio partner. There is funding in the state budget that essentially pays Ohio farmers to pick and package their produce that is not retail worthy, shall I say. Sometimes the carrots are big and bulky and the apples are too small. And, you know, those aren't perfect for the grocery store, but they're perfect to eat. And so through this program, we are able to get a lot of fresh produce. Like I said, it's the best food that we see in our warehouse. So I was just in Columbus yesterday because we are gearing up for a state budget. And we do have a request to continue to fund that. It's so important to us. We also get about 20% from the USDA. So like I said, this is all possible because of the grassroots network, but also because there are government commodities that are available. Kind of balances out the market in the USDA. Get a lot of great products. Most of those are shelf stable beans and corn and things like that that are grown in the US that we're able to get in the form of some sort of canned good. Through Feeding America, that's about 15%. Feeding America is the national hunger relief organization. You've probably seen maybe some commercials or heard about. There are 200 food banks in the US. So Feeding America organizes, you know, for the entire nation, lobbies in DC, but they also have really great relationships with big food companies. And so we're able to leverage those partnerships and also talk to other food banks about what food they're getting donated. We do also purchase food. I mentioned before, sometimes there are supply chain issues and sometimes donations do not flow as easily into our network. And so we absolutely have to hold some money to purchase food items. And, you know, if you ever hear like one of our partners say that they had to pay for food from the food bank, it's just perfect. items that we had to purchase. So for example, if we get a ton of tomato sauce donated, we might want to go out and buy some pasta. So we also try to make, meals available and have a nice menu of items for someone who's running a hot mix site or a pantry. And then you can see the last one, which is the best community way, but it is only 1% of our food is a food drive. But like I said, when you have a food drive with a community organization or a school, it's the way that we raise awareness about hunger. The food drives, although they're only 1% of the food we receive, they're very important in just spreading the message. And then just an example of some of our major partners. A lot of great food donations. And then just a little bit more about our network. You can see all of the counties that we serve. You can see our entire region, and the little green dots are where our partner programs are. So you can see in some of the more rural areas, you don't see as many. And you see a lot around Akron and Canton regions. Oh, we don't have the star for our Canton facilities, but Canton they're starting. So we do have our 2 facilities now, which you can see is so much easier for some of our partners who maybe were in Lower Custer County, not having to drive all the way up to Akron. Now they can pick up their order in Canton, which is also better for food safety, traveling with that much food. Like I mentioned, we have the Ohio Association of Food Banks, and there are 12 food banks in Ohio, and we cover every county. And like I said, they're in Columbus, because it's important that we advocate and talk to our legislators about the great programs that we have and why that's something so important to us. And then Feeding America, you can see the entire network. Every state is covered, every county is covered in the U.S. And there are 202 food banks overall. And we like to say, if you've seen one food bank, you've seen one food bank, because we can all be very different as well. So that is the Canton facility that we just built and opened up in July of 2021. And here's some of the construction on our Akron facility. We also did some renovations that we completed finally at the end of last year. We moved our distribution dock, doubled our cooler space, we doubled our freezer space, and we put in a pantry to serve the neighbors. This is our pantry in Akron. You can see how it's set up much like a grocery store. And finally, how you can get involved and how you can help. So volunteering. I mean, that's definitely one of the best ways you want to come either to the Akron site or the Canton site. We are constantly going through food donations. So let's see, raise your hand if you heard about that butter recall that happened this week. Did anyone hear about the butter? Guess what? It didn't say that it contained milk. So it was kind of like people were laughing about that. So people know that there's milk in butter. But standards, the FDA, like you have to list every single ingredient on your product because of allergies. And sometimes those are the type of things that are donated to food banks. But I thought I'd mention it. It's a good example. We will get products where they made a mistake on the label. They, maybe didn't get the right consistency or color sometimes. Or there was just, some kind of goof, or maybe the product didn't sell. So those are the types of things we see in our volunteer center. And a lot of that is like relabeling products, packaging products. In Canton, that's where we do a lot of our box building. So we will build those senior boxes in Canton. So there's a lot of different projects depending on the day that you come, where you're able to put your hands on food, package it up, and know that it'll be on somebody's plate, probably within the week, right? We have volunteer opportunities in the warehouse, but now that we have 2 pantries, that is another volunteer opportunity. And so if you're interested in directly serving and interacting, with people who are in need of assistance, that is another way. Of course, donating, like I said, every dollar donated equals 3 meals. Okay. And like I mentioned, food and fun drive, it's a great way to just involve a community. And so there are certain items that we do ask for, our Super Six, our box cereal, canned soup and stew, canned tuna, canned vegetables, macaroni and cheese, and peanut butter. So those are just kind of highly requested items that we like to. And then really just connecting. Of course, we're on all social media, on all the places, Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. And so we do like to share because we do have a lot of community events that happen. A lot of times organizations will do food or funds drives for us or special events for us. Like if you've ever heard of the polar bear jump, where you jump into cold water, that benefits the food bank every other year. So there's a lot of things like that, or different, cross marketing type things, like easy ways you can support the food bank that you can learn about by just connecting with us on social media or visiting our website, which is akroncampus.org. And that's it for the presentation, but I'm definitely open for questions.
Of a question in terms of that I think there's some things going on in the country that are going to affect the security of the food supply for a lot more people. Partly because of the extended drought, that's not, that's going to continue to be drought versus flood versus, but a lot of areas that have been, of course, are significant food production areas that may have a lot to do with price of food, never mind its accessibility. That's not a temporary thing. It may get worse before we figure out how to make it better. So I guess my question is, given the already announced projections for increases in water, the cost of water, and the cost of if you're being heated with gas, natural gas, those costs are already projected to increase significantly over the next 3 years. We know what their projections are, and that's going to create even more pressure for families that are already having food insecurity areas. So I'm thinking that we're going to have a whole lot more demand as we move forward, no matter what happens in Washington. So this has to do with our food production capacity. And so the follow-up question is, have you thought about working within your network to encourage local communities to develop community gardens in vacant land that somehow the community can either acquire on permanent use of? Because that seems to be working really well in certain areas of the country. I know Detroit has significant areas, Boston has had them for a long time. So have we thought about that?
Yeah, we have. And what we try to do is connect with the organizations who are doing that type of work. In the city of Akron, there are certain, like Let's Grow Akron and some other, it's very important that we stay connected to our communities and what's happening in our communities locally. Because we have to pay attention to the big picture, the macroeconomics of the whole country. And there are certain things that impact that. And for example, there was trade mitigation that happened previously when there were tariffs on China that impacted our food supply and brought more food to us. But then on the local micro level as well, we have to be monitoring what's happening and trying to support those efforts. We've looked into community gardens and how much time you know, how much of our time we can spend on things like that in Ohio. So we try to support and be a partner in those things while not taking it on because we have so many macro issues as well. So, yeah, and I agree with, everything you said. I want to take you to Columbus when we go, because you're right, there are certainly so many issues that are going to impact local farmers, local agriculture. And I think the best thing about our state is that we partner with Ohio farmers. They come with us when we talk to our legislators in Columbus. Because it's just as vital to them as it is to us. And there are food banks, like the food bank in Columbus, Mid-Ohio actually has their own farm. So there's definitely food banks who are, you know, doing all kinds of different things around that. And it's usually a matter of resources and staff time. Yeah. Okay.
First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. I can testify my temple has done work with the Advent Food Bank, and it's a great activity, not only helping people, but it's a great, you know, come from around eating. Free eating food. And I love the idea of also working at distribution places, because some of our members are. And I've heard that there's another organization that serves above itself, that organization. I'm sure they are. When someone asked, I worked for Heinz for 50 years. So I said, how come Heinz isn't up there? Well, Heinz actually donates their close coated product up to the.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But, question I have is also in terms of education on food buying and prep. Do you or is there an organization helping those in need to understand how to, you know, best use their scarce food dollars to get the best nutrition? Because from the retailer side, you always bank on people paying for convenience and things, which, you know, they could obviously get those nutrients a lot less expensively. But anyway, so if there's
That's a really good question, because you're right, that there are you know, the issue of what to do. Even sometimes we get food that's donated to us, like a rhubarb. I don't know what to do with rhubarb, and we know that a lot of people may not know what to do with certain items. Yeah, my grandma. So we do have with both of our facilities have kitchens, teaching kitchens, what we call them. So we'll have a chef come in. So it's kind of part of our programming that they will come in and kind of shop in our pantry to see what items are available, and then do a little cooking demo showing, you know, here's how you can make this stretch. Here's how you can. One example, I went to one in Canton, and we had, from the USDA, we get some interesting products, you know, because it's commodities that are kind of surplus in the US. So there was a canned pork, which, again, I'm not really sure what I would do with that. And there was also some black beans. And so the chef came in, took these products, showed people, oh, you should rinse your black beans first because, you know, the sodium content lessens when you rinse them. And then he threw the black beans together with some broth and this canned sausage, or pork that I wouldn't have known what to do with, and made a tortilla soup that was delicious. And so we try to do those types of things and provide recipes. We also now in Akron have a lot of refugee populations that are coming to the food pantry. They're certainly in need of support. And so we are trying to source some additional products that may be more familiar. And we have, you know, some language barriers as well. So there's a lot of things that we, you know, kind of look at who's coming to our pantries and try to provide the assistance support that they need. But nutrition is definitely one of those, and kind of like how to shop, and certainly something to do.
Thank you for your work. It's coming from the crews is really valuable. So yeah. But can you maybe tell us just personally, what got you into this line of work?
Oh, good question. Well, yeah, interesting. I grew up in Akron, in about a mile from the food bank. And, my parents worked hard and we had enough money to get by. They had enough to send me to St. B. So yeah, certainly the servant heart was in me from day one and wanting a vocation that was able to serve my community and give back. And my parents would take me down to Jeanette's, which is a soup kitchen that was right down the street from me, right by the Krispy Kreme donut. So we'd have to smell those donuts, but then able to serve the community in that way. And so early on, my parents instilled in me how important it was to serve the community, to show me that other people didn't have the same type of resources that we have. So for me personally, Akron and being an Akron girl is part of the reason I worked at the Akron Beacon Journal and then worked at the Akron Canton Regional Food Bank because my community has always been that important to me and just important to get that. Even though I live in Medina now, Akron is my heart. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Go. The name came out of the hat. You wouldn't mind telling us briefly something about you that we don't already know and
Take it off the burger.
for your service. Make sure you pick up your potential entrance into the winner of Rotary.
Always learn, learn something new. That is, there, yes.
No, I this way, I come from Springfield, Ohio, born in community hospital in Springfield, Ohio. And I have never eaten a dog or a cat. So, yes.
It's good to know that.
Yeah, it was not work.
Okay, and then with that, it's Rotobuck time. We have a payout of $7, jackpot 116. I'll have Colleen pick the winning ticket. And our winner, and the winner chicken dinner is, probably Jeffy win this, last week. Was it Mike Swain? Got the winning ticket. The last four are 2812. 2812. Oh, Ron. So we redial this up for next week. All right. Useless information. 21 meals, Ron. Okay. Everyone, I believe, has probably heard of Paul Harvey. Everybody's heard of Paul Harvey. So this is really some time ago. So this is information that I think you'll find is useful. However, it comes from the Paul Harvey stories. And typically, I would just tell you something. I don't. Unfortunately, this one, I think I have to kind of read it in order to do Mr. Harvey's justice. So bear with me. But this will probably, if you haven't heard this, you're likely going to walk away thinking, oh my gosh. So once in a rare moment in the story, the veterans of my finished telling you what I'm going to tell you. And that I have this confirmed already through 3 independent sources before I was willing to tell you this story. But here we go. It's May 12th, 1863. Civil War battlefield in Virginia. Captain Capers waited to do his duty. Captain Capers was a field surgeon for the Union Army. And he realized, much to his distaste, that regardless of the battle's outcome, there was always going to be work for him. Now, at the edge of the battlefield, about a mile from the nearest village, was a mansion. On the porch stood the mistress of the house and her 2 daughters, watching and waiting anxiously to see if there might be somebody they could assist. Somebody wounded. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the battle was raging within 100 yards of the mansion. Captain Capers, the surgeon, looked up suddenly, startled by a high-pitched scream that he had not heard ever in the battle. Moments later, the woman from the mansion was standing at his side, almost out of breath. It was her daughter. One of her daughters had been shot. Well, the captain hurried back to the mansion and discovered that indeed the 17-year-old girl had a jagged bullet wound in the abdomen. Capers dressed the injury best as he could and prescribed something for the pain. Then he had to run back to the regiment, calling over his shoulder that he'd be back to look in on the girl every now and then. Now, it's several days that the Captain Capers Brigade set up headquarters in a nearby village. So he was able to make good on that promise, returning to the mansion. There he was dismayed to learn the teenager with the gunshot wound had developed peritonitis. Followed up closely. After that, returning to check on the progress of this young patient almost every day. The girl eventually recovered, and after she had recovered months later, Captain Capers returned to relate the rest of the story. He was on the battlefield when the shot that had wounded the girl was fired, and although he could not see who fired it, he could tell by the line of fire that the bullet, before reaching the young lady, had gazed through a young soldier. Captain Capers had been standing not far from this young soldier when it happened. Since no bullet was ever retrieved from the soldier, the girl was probably carrying it somewhere inside, which is why something else had occurred. You see, the soldier had been wounded. Well, the bullet carried clean away one of the young man's reproductive glands, and that same bullet wounded the 17-year-old girl in the uterus, and thus medically, verifiably, was the young lady impregnated by a man she had never met. The two did meet subsequently, and almost as miraculously, they fell in love, they married, and they had 2 children by a means more convenient. And further to collaborate the circumstances of the original pregnancy, Soon after that infant was virgin born, 278 days after the battle, it developed a curious swelling that necessitated surgery. And in the process of treating that swelling, there was removed from the baby a bullet. Nowhere in medical annals, nothing like this has ever happened before. Surely likely would never happen again. But in a world full of hatred, was inspired by an unknown Cupid who fired a magic bullet, the only bullet in any war that has ever happened that gave life rather than take it away. Now you know the rest of the story. And with that, everyone, have a fantastic day.